Everyone else is doing it, so we will as well, as we will be reviewing I Am Racist. Sorry, am I racist? Oh, God.
What is racism?
Martin Luther King said not to judge people by the...
Martin Luther King said a lot of stuff.
Yep, I caved. I saw the movie that everyone is talking about right now, and I have some very interesting things I want to say about it, as of course a lot of people are cheering on its praise, but I actually have some criticisms to make of this particular movie, as I think it comes at a very perfect time, especially during a political election cycle where a lot of people are hyper-focused specifically about race, an issue that has been becoming more of an issue ever since Occupy Wall Street, where I think a lot of powerful people were really kind of rattled and pissed off and now thought of new schemes in order to divide and conquer our society. And that's exactly what they did. Now, as you know, I have my fair criticisms of the Daily Wire here, but they are making a lot of major moves, and having this movie be available to the wider American public and to be in movie theaters is a huge freaking deal. To have the movie critics respond like they are, to have the corporate media respond like they are to this, as people in droves are coming to actually see this movie and pay for it, really does highlight what I think is a larger cultural victory that does deserve to be noted and respected. Also, no spoiler alerts here as well during this broadcast. I didn't just want to talk about this movie, but also the larger kind of conversations that it has started in my own personal mind that I'm going to extrapolate on. I want to fairly review it, and I want to, of course, do a larger deep dive on this very specific issue, which, sadly, a lot of people are very scared to have an honest conversation about. And even the way that Matt Walsh's film kind of approached this does kind of show a larger tiptoeing, although some people argued that was the kind of method here in order to give the rope to a lot of these race hucksters that are enriching themselves tremendously through just saying all people bad because they were born a specific way, essentially doing everything that they're preaching not to be. And that hypocrisy is very easy to highlight, very easy to see, and something that this movie absolutely drives home in a pretty good way. We'll talk about that in a little bit, as I also thought it did a couple things that were wrong and were the right personal approach that I would personally take on this personal endeavor. Now, the movie is gaining Daily Wire a lot of funding, as they are now reportedly earning close to $5 million, as the movie is now opened in 1,517 movie theaters nationwide. And it right now is at the number 4 spot at the box office its opening weekend. And it's one of the reasons why I decided to see it, in order to show my support for this larger conversation that I think is more important than ever to have in this particular country, especially after the major damage that was done to race relations after the corporately infused BLM movement caused riots all throughout this country. This, as when you go to Google and you type in race in America, the first thing that's kind of highlighted to you is that the population of the United States is becoming more diverse. What does more diverse mean? As we saw in the beginning of I Am Racist, one of these woke people literally says, yeah, diverse means anything but white, which kind of bastardizes the definition of diversity. If you want a diversity, you want a whole bunch of everybody, not just less of one particular race or one particular color. As the first thing Google shows you is how the percentage of people who identify as white alone in combination with other groups are decreasing, and have decreased more than 10% in a span of about 10 years. As in 2010, it was 72.4% of the U.S. population. 2021, it is 61.6%. Something that very oddly by the corporate media establishment is being celebrated and cheered on by very powerful people. It's of course, I think it's that's a little weird. Okay, hey, there's less of these people. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Why are you doing that? And why is that okay? That seems to be a question that is never asked here, never really started, as of course there are new forms of discrimination that are happening all throughout the United States that are absolutely important to pay attention to. As new jobs reports are coming out from S&P 100 corporations, and they're clearly highlighting how in the name of equity, some of the top 100 corporations in the United States hired 94% of people of color and only 6% of white people, as of course white people make up the majority of the population, clearly highlighting racial discrimination based upon people's skin color. Not about their merit, not about their qualities, not about if they're capable or good for the job, but clearly there were larger kind of DEI discriminatory hiring efforts here that made it an issue to, of course, discriminate people because of the way that they were born, essentially bringing back kind of racist policies that clearly are racist since they deny opportunities to people who are qualified for the jobs but will be denied of them because of the way that they were born. Why are we doing this? Well, because there has been a bastardized conversation that has been taken over here in the United States by some absolute crazy lunatics. As the argument is being made, white people have all the money. White people have all the power. When in reality, you look at the numbers and you look at median household incomes in the United States by ethnic groups, it's actually Indian Americans that make more than white Americans. It's also Filipino Americans, Taiwanese Americans, Sri Lankan Americans, Japanese Americans, Malaysian Americans, Chinese Americans, Pakistani Americans, that all make, according to the median household income numbers, more than white Americans. As of course, why aren't these numbers discussed more, says Wall Street Silver. These are the ethnic diverse populations that, of course, are also getting priority in the job market, priority in the education system, and are earning more. As it's fair to say, the United States wasn't as race-obsessed as it was right after Occupy Wall Street, a movement that, of course, we documented from the very first days of here on this particular YouTube channel, which you could go and see the start of, the evolution of, and the larger consequences of it. As a lot of people on the left, a lot of people on the right came together and said, hey, there's a lot of economic injustice here. Hey, the Federal Reserve banking system that just prints money and gives it to Wall Street and all these other secret billionaire trillion dollars levels of clandestine bailouts that are happening here are kind of unfair to the average Joe just trying to survive here. And that left and right kind of combination that slowly was usurped, in my opinion, and became a left-wing dominated movement sent shockwaves, especially after the 2008 banking crisis that was spurred on by reckless Republican Party policies that spent more on war rather than, of course, allowing the average citizen to actually keep their own money. And it's fair to say that Occupy Wall Street scared the crap out of a lot of very powerful people. And ever since Occupy Wall Street, when people started to draw attention to the real power structure in this country, what happened? Well, the corporate media, specifically the New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal, all started to obsess about racism, gay marriage, LGBTQ ideology, and of course everything else that is absolutely divisive in our society and has people fighting each other culturally within it. As of course a lot of people are saying, it's fascinating that race became a major issue right after Occupy Wall Street. As of course the mainstream media led the way with other very powerful institutions that are now openly discriminating against people, really does highlight a larger kind of hijacking here and a major pivot in American culture where the media was forced to talk about economic disparity and now was forced to solely talk about racism. As now many of the same leftists are cheering for the same corporatist policies that the people that they previously protested are now cheerleading. And again, a lot of this is not an accident. I saw it on the ground. I saw its evolution. I saw its hijacking. And it's something to, of course, speak volumes about that I could go on for many hours. But that's not the point of this particular video, as we still have more details to get into about Matt Walsh's film here related about this very important particular subject. As now, to add insult to injury, a lot of the people who are now obsessed about hating themselves or focused about other people's differences, which they never really kind of were beforehand. And trust me, I traveled all over the frickin' world. America is one of the least racist countries in the world. There are a lot of really racist people in America, in Africa, especially look at what's happening between the South Africans and the Zimbabweans. Holy frickin' cow. The Koreans and the Japanese. Man, oh man, the Chinese. I've been to China before. Yo! You have no idea how wild stuff gets in other parts of the world. And coming here to America, I say it's one of the most racially cohesive, one of the least racist places on the entire world. And I don't say that lightly. I say that from a lot of experience, literally being all over the frickin' world. And to have conversations specifically talking about these issues in such a bastardized way that promotes victimhood, that promotes self-hate, is something that is one of the most obscene and ridiculous things that I have seen in my life. As, of course, the conversation continues, specifically in many Western countries, where these same media publications are talking about how it is shameful to have children. As in the same moment and breath almost, these same media publications are talking about the values of opening up the borders and allowing people to go into your country. As Elon Musk has recently pointed an LA Times article describing it as extinctionist that wants to end all of humanity. As, of course, specifically, a lot of these advertisements always have white people pictured there. There's a lot of effort specifically to make the weather gooder, specifically highlight white people and their demand to have them specifically no longer have children, while at the same time cheering the praises of cultural diversity and saying, yeah, let's import the third world that is not having this kind of severe problem with population levels, with reproduction rates and birth rates. As, of course, the corporate media now is talking about the racist rhetoric surrounding Haitians in a small town in Ohio after 20,000 of them have been placed there by the U.S. federal government. As, of course, we were talking about Springfield, Ohio, where the corporate media is now obsessively talking about, oh, there's bad rhetoric here. Not the fact that 20,000 people were sent there in order to replace the local population. As one of the criticisms I would have of Matt Walsh's film is that, in my opinion, it didn't go hard enough. There's a lot of things about this specific conversation that I wish were kind of heard here, that I wish were kind of discussed in a more kind of like, whoa, hey, this is kind of a very serious issue and a very serious problem here that we should absolutely address. And for me personally, and some people might disagree with me, I was hoping when I was watching that movie, there would have been at least some kind of moment where he kind of stripped off the disguise that wasn't really a disguise. He just kind of had a fake wig. That's all he did. He had a fake wig. And he was able to pay a lot of these kind of race hucksters and these DEI priestesses thousands of dollars to appear on camera. And he actually highlighted how much he was paying each of these people that appeared in his movie to particularly lecture people about how bad they are for being white. And the only criticism I have here is that it was kind of repetitive. It was the same kind of thing over and over and over again. And I thought they could have changed it up. The last bit, I won't ruin the surprise here, and I don't want to give any kind of spoiler, did change it up a little bit, but overall, the majority of the movie is just that kind of bit that you kind of see highlighted here in the trailer. It's like, okay, let's go pay these people, let them sit down and talk about their nonsense. And there's a lot of nonsense, and there's a lot of bigotry, and there's a lot of just sensationalistic kind of dribble of them talking about how everything is so unfair. As Matt Walsh literally puts how much money he's paying these people. As one of the people was paid $50,000 to appear in his show. Now, in my opinion, if you're paying $50,000 to have one of these people, this is, for me, at least how I would have approached it, take off the disguise, confront some of these people and be like, are you understanding just how absolutely ridiculous, awful, and hateful you are yourself? And I kind of wanted that kind of larger feeling. Now, I understand the argument on the other side that this was a movie where these people were given the rope in order to, of course, symbolically take themselves out. And I think it's a fair assessment. But just for me personally, I think there could have been a more powerful kind of punch at the end with like, hey, let's just stop pretending I'm one of you guys. This is who I am. This is stupid. Now, again, that might not work. And the better strategy could have been Matt Walsh's strategy here. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment. Now, a lot of what was happening here was also very improvised. And I thought some of it could have been done with more kind of long-term strategy, as it did kind of seem like the filmmakers were just playing out a bunch of different kind of scenarios and different kind of themes. And then we saw Matt Walsh kind of change characters and play into this pretend character sometimes. Sometimes he didn't, especially in this kind of scene that we're highlighting here. And it kind of led to less of a more cohesive kind of larger picture of what we were all kind of experiencing in the movie theaters. Now, a lot of people were saying that they were laughing their butts off. There were a couple moments where I laughed. Was it an absolutely hilarious movie? No. Was it funny? Yeah. Am I going to tell you it was the funniest movie of the year? No. And again, I'm just trying to be, completely honest and transparent with you guys. Is it a Hollywood blockbuster, awesome Borat-style movie that is like Borat? When it comes to the levels of kind of sophistication and comedy and humor, no. is it the best that alternative independent media has? Absolutely, and it is far superior than anything else that people in our market could ever produce, and it's one of the best that the market in our media sphere, in our group, has ever produced. Yes. And I don't just want to come off as a hater because again, some people are going to say, oh, you're just nitpicking here. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do when you're critiquing stuff, when you're reviewing stuff. And overall, the conversations that were started here, absolutely critically important. And even though it didn't have that kind of last hoorah, that last kind of gut punch, that last kind of, hey, you're all mentally deranged here, even though it didn't have that last kind of satisfactory moment, I still think for the larger kind of culture war, for the larger kind of battles that we are all involved in, especially with how bastardized this conversation has become, that it is critical for people to kind of go out there, show support for it, and especially bring your normie friends. I made sure I brought a lady friend of my own, and her perspectives were pretty interesting as well. She also highlighted how, those people were absolutely crazy that Matt Walsh highlighted here, but also highlighted how the end could have crescendoed a lot better through, of course, some kind of larger kind of realization, confrontation, or just more of the honing in the message than more than just the usual kind of generic MLK kind of message that you're kind of left with after watching the show. Now, again, it's an important message, and I think a message that we could go back to, that is important to highlight, that is important to talk about. And overall, if we're judging it on movies in the movie theaters, I give it like a B, to be fair. When I'm rating it for movies from people in our sphere, A++++++. Really good movie. Unless you're nitpicking like I am right now, unless you're just being hypercritical like I am, still a worthwhile watch, especially with your normie friends that normally wouldn't watch this. As I think the strategy of having these people speak, mocking it and laughing it, is something that is absolutely important. And if you agree with that, share this video with your friends and family members. We're going to be discussing this movie plus a lot more with you guys in real life this Friday, 7 p.m. in Miami for members of LukeUnfiltered.com. Yes, you heard that correctly. We're doing a meetup in South Beach this Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, just for members of LukeUnfiltered.com, as you also get exclusive videos just for members alone, 3 master classes, and a...
So, Matt Walsh made a movie. Daily Wire did their job. Okay, good. Didn't crescendo like it could. Okay. Is it something that people in the congregation like as opposed to the choir? I think that's the big thing. Luke said for the freedom community, it'd be like A+++, but like for the general public, if it doesn't have all the things that resonate with them, it doesn't adhere to the normie mentality as easily or as effectively as it could. And I think that, unless you're going to take the whole shtick up a notch, because like the reason he doesn't confront them is because it all turns into they live. We've got one that can see, and they start going around, so he didn't want to do that in the movie. That wouldn't be a good ending either. But in these types of things, I think it helps to have an objective mindset where you are pulling in the side that's on the fence, the people who haven't really educated themselves about this, but they don't have an emotional reaction to the information and they're willing to learn and they're curious. You're missing out on really reaching to that audience. I think, having not seen the movie, but seen lots of clips of it, that can be done for people who are curious and really want to understand. But if you have someone who's the least bit entrenched in their position, they're just going to dismiss it as right-wing extremist filmmaker does dishonest, unethical things to make movie, right? And that's going to be their position. So I guess it comes down to your judgment when you're talking to somebody, if they're an open-minded, curious person looking to understand, or if they've already entrenched themselves in a position and they're just looking to bounce their knowledge and wisdom, so-called, off of you so that you can absorb it alone and that they don't have anything to learn. I find those are not conversations. And there's a set of rules circulating of how to have a conversation. And it involves both sides being able to develop their ideas so the other side can understand. Scott, what did you think of that? The notion of the Matt Walsh movie. If you haven't seen it, it's out there doing its thing, and the angle it's taken. What's your thoughts?
I mean, well, it's really interesting because there's another movie that came out this last week that
Ooh.
I'm kind of bummed that he didn't critique that one, but Vaxxed 3 came out this week. And there's a large group of us from a little freedom community that went to there was a screening of it here in Nashville. I know it's going to be out publicly. Gosh, I'm sorry. It might be out now. It might have been out on Friday. I don't know off the top of my head. I was trying to look it up real quick and I just can't. Oh, there it is. Vaxxed 3 authorized to kill. Free online premiere October 4th. There you go. So about 11 days it's going to premiere for everybody, but they did special screenings across the country and one of them's here in Nashville, and so we all went and checked it out. And it was very powerful. It was very good. Definitely recommend it. But it was kind of funny because in the beginning, like they were having problems with the projector or however they do movies these days. And it was like a half an hour after it was starting and everybody's like, oh, they're censoring us. They're censoring us. But the theater people were cool. And they came around and handed us like free passes for like another movie. And I was like, this is perfect because I definitely don't want to give any money to the Daily Wire. But hey, I got a free pass. So I'll probably go end up seeing Am I Racist at some point. So I have not seen it, but I feel like it's probably worth a watch at least. It's just to sit back and chuckle at it. It's typical Daily Wire fashion where it's no solutions or anything. It's just sensationalizing stuff, and it's just like just to aggravate you so you give them more money. That's like the business model. And to be fair, Infowars does that. You know what I mean? They all do that. It's like let's enrage our audience so that you will give us more money, type of thing. But why not just have fun with it, man? Like there's nothing more fun than like laughing at these wacky folks, So I mean, for a strictly entertainment, yeah.
I like that he didn't use like a really, really good disguise. Like he barely disguised himself. He just put on a bad wig and some glasses. No, he already wears glasses, so it's just like a bad wig. And he's not really trying to like conceal his identity as much as just like make you wonder what's going on. And putting himself out there in those situations and be privy to those conversations. First off, having a checkbook to write $50,000 check for some nonsense where the woman's going to wear a mask and not talk to you anyway. I mean, that right there is hilarious. And if you focused more on that in the movie.
Yeah, they probably filmed most of it here in Nashville. So I wish I could have just I could have snuck in there and posed as like a woke person and got some Daily Wire money, dude. But oh well, I'll keep an eye out for the next Daily Wire production. There you go.
Well, we'll send you a wig with a little man bun, just like he had, and you can have the same infiltration and invisibility capabilities that he has. Because I just thought that was like he should be known by those people that he was interviewing, right? Like they are opponents on the battlefield, and for Robin DiAngelo to sit down and be like, "What's your name?" and he said, "Matt." And she kept going because she's like, I'm taking the money. And when she paid his producer, like that's all priceless right there. Rogan had a glowing review of it. He's like, it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, but whatever. He had nothing else to say because it was kind of a long interview with Walsh on Rogan over there. They had to talk about the moon landing and stuff because there was nothing else to talk about.
They did, huh? Is Rogan still saying that
Well, he was just getting Matt's opinion on his exposure to it because, like, I was driving home from Florida, so like, when you're an hour, 8 hours in the car, it's like I got 3 hours to listen to Matt Walsh talk to Rogan, and I really don't listen to Rogan unless I'm on a road trip. So it's like a couple times a year I'll listen to a couple Rogans, but yeah, it was like not convincing for either of them. Like Matt didn't have some really good points, and Rogan didn't have any good points that Matt accepted. So he's like, I have a belief, and Rogan's like, I have a belief, and it wasn't a Venn diagram. It was just like two circles that looked like boobs, I guess.
Is Rogan still taking the position that it was fake or it didn't happen?
I think he's softened up on that because
see, that's the thing. Yeah. It's like that's the thing. It's like once you go, how do you go back? I don't know.
There's still legit questions about all of it, but some of the evidence that had been touted about out there is like not the best evidence.
Sure.
Was NASA made of rocket scientists that came from the Nazis? Yeah. Was there a whole bunch of national security and lying about that? Yeah. Was there a whole bunch of mystical black magic secret society stuff going on with that? Hell yeah. Right. So there's like a lot of layers to it. Could they photograph in those conditions on the moon? Did they actually go there? Like the telemetry is gone. They destroyed the tapes. So NASA itself doesn't help in those in those situations. So I find that I don't need to have a position on it. Yeah. Like it doesn't make a difference to what I have to do tomorrow to support my family or anything I'm doing this week, this month, this year. So if it came down to it, like I'm open, show me some more evidence, but I've seen enough that it's like confusing and there's no real benefit in taking one side or the other. but I'd say there's not a whole lot on the side of trust. You know, the whole thing was second or third generation from the start. Why did they do that? Was the CIA involved? They were. So why are they doing it? Oh, Cold War, national security. Okay. That just tells me they're in there lying. They're not in there like telling truth. What's their role in that situation other than deception? It'd be like saying Mossad's involved helping you find the truth. It's like their make war by deception is their motto, bro. So
totally. And you know what's interesting though too is like one of the things they talk about is like how Stanley Kubrick was involved in faking it. And I saw this really good interview with Vivian Kubrick, his daughter.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how, you know, there was no possible way that he could have done it because like she was recalling that time in her life when it happened, and she was like with him all the time, and they were filming another movie. I can't remember which one, like at the same time, like Barry Lyndon.
Barry Lyndon,
like
yeah,
that.
he used the lens. He used the lens because they filmed in candlelight. So what they did was, real quick, there's a mockumentary, and I forget the name of it, but it came out in like 2000, 2001, early 2000s. And it's right after Stanley died, and it opens up with like, here's Christiane Kubrick, or you know, his wife, Vivian's mom, and his brother-in-law, and there's a legit interview with them, but the scenes are kind of taken out of context, and then there's legit people in the movie, so it's called a mockumentary because it's part documentary. There's real people in there telling real stories, and then some of those real stories are taken out of context and to make another story, right? So it itself is a form of like psychological warfare. It's a French movie.
Sure.
The thing I found that really was the splinter for me, it's a minor piece, but they interview a former director of CIA, and I didn't know his name, so I was incredulous. I'm like, this is an actor. They made this guy up, but I found out he's a real guy, and he had a temporary admin CIA director type thing, right? Acting director type thing, and he died the day after the interview for that movie.
Wow.
Which was also a verifiable, like, oh, okay. And it wasn't advertised in the movie that the guy died right after, I don't think so. There were some parts where I was like, this is totally fake, and there were some parts where I'm like, this is totally real. And then I was trying to discern, what is the filmmaker trying to communicate to the public? An idea so dangerous, if he actually had the evidence, he couldn't show it to you. So he's going to show you something like this. And then the story was that Kubrick had borrowed this lens from NASA that he used for Barry Lyndon because it had this really big aperture. He was able to make this incredible movie filmed in candlelight, a lot of the scenes, no artificial lighting, gives it a very unique visual quality. And then people were like, how could Kubrick call NASA, pull that favor of that, you know, Zeiss lens that NASA used for the moon stuff? And that was the beginning of like one of those conspiracy rabbit hole threads 20 years ago, before Jay Weidner and Kubrick's Gold and Kubrick's Odyssey and all those other things. There was that original documentary, and
that's interesting. Flips. Yeah, that's interesting. And Vivian, like her main point was like, if my father would have done it, it would have looked way better. So that was her final conclusion.
That's true, but they would also have to be like, dude, you got to dumb it down. So we'll bring in some British filmmakers, and we'll do it at Pinewood Studios, and
yeah, there you go.
MI6 will run the whole thing, because it wasn't like the CIA faked it. The CIA is just like, it's like the pinky on the hand of the British Empire. It's like it's around and it's attached to all their activities, but we take it as the whole hand. That's how it's set up. But it's not. When you look into who created it and what's the order of operations, then you can find who's in power. And I would put a bunch of tax-exempt, non-governmental organizations above the CIA because they also helped to create it. I would also put an organization like AIG above the CIA because they helped to create it. The insurance people, the bankers, created intelligence agencies. Surprise, surprise, Sergeant Carter. So these types of things are pieces of history that we should better understand.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures, they're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.